the task force members, staff, other parties to our proceedings tonight. I hope everyone had a good summer. As we begin tonight, the final phase of the work of the task force, I appreciate everyone's patience. We've been at this for a little bit longer than I thought we anticipated we would be when we got started, but as Michael suggested, November, December should be the time when we complete our work, and express my appreciation, as I mentioned when I presented before the Board of Supervisors on the Ravensworth project, for the participation of all the task force members. It's been most productive and helpful, and I know that will continue. So let me do the formal stuff we have to do to conduct our meeting virtually tonight. Why don't I get started with that? That'll take a few minutes. So to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the Mason District SSPA Task Force needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the task force is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I am going to conduct a roll call and ask each task force member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So I'll start with the roll call. Robert Chamberlain.
Hey, Marty.
Good evening.
I am joining the call today from Alexandria, Virginia, Fairfax County.
Thank you. Joshua Booth.
Hello, I'm Joshua Booth. I'm joining from Lincolnia in Fairfax County.
Thanks, Josh. Jeff Longo.
This is Jeff Longo. I'm joining from Falls Church, Fairfax County.
Thanks, Jeff. Dave Nguyen. Dave. Donna Jacobson.
Hi, Donna Jacobson, Annandale, Virginia, Fairfax County.
Thanks, Donna. Bill Likos. Not here. Ed Feig.
Ed Feig from Annandale, Virginia.
Thanks, Ed. Binod Gupta. Here. Jan Keys.
Jan Keys from Falls Church, Virginia.
Thanks, Jan. Karen Geyer-Smith.
Karen Geyer-Smith from Fairfax, Virginia.
Thanks, Karen. And I'm Martin Machowski calling in from my home in Falls Church, Virginia. So we have 8 present, 3 unaccounted for. So at this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Karen so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Mason District SSPA Task Force.
Is
there a second?
I hear a second.
Second.
Donna seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Neg for no? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communications is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the task force to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the task force and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the task force may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by registering through the meeting link on the Track a Plan Amendment page of the SSPA website at https://www.fairfaxcounty.gov/planning-development/SSPA/south/track-plan-amendment, or by calling 1-844-621-3956 or TTY 711 and entering the access code 179-013-8375. It is so moved.
Second.
Okay, I had a second from whom?
Okay, I'll second.
No, somebody already seconded. I just
Oh,
didn't catch who it
okay.
was. It was Joshua. Okay. And so all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously.
Finally, it is next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Mason District SSPA Task Force's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
And that was Ed.
Ed, correct.
Okay, and so I have a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying yay. Or aye.
Yay.
Aye.
Nay.
All opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? Again, the motion passes unanimously. Is that
Thank you,
the
Karen.
last one, Marty?
That's it.
Okay,
That was the last one. Thank you,
That's it.
Karen. Just one more administrative matter. As task force members may have realized, Alice Wang has resigned from a task force. She had some scheduling problems and other things on her plate, but that necessitates us establishing a new vice chair for the task force, and in consultation with the staff and with her, staff asked Karen if she would be willing to serve in that role, as she has ably in the past when Alice has not been at our meetings. So just to confirm that, I move that the task force elect Karen Geyer-Smith as the vice chairman of the Mason District SSPA task force. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion is so adopted. Karen, congratulations. You're now vice chair.
I'm good at being vice.
SSPA task force. Thank you.
Karen.
Unless there are any other, Michael, any other administrative matters, why don't we proceed with the agenda that you sent out
Sure.
to the task force members?
Sure.
It's for those of the members of the public who may be listening, the agenda is largely in two parts. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. One will be a review again of the task force process and the SSPA process and where we are in phase 2 and what decisions will be made. The second, more substantive portion of the agenda tonight will include a look at the two properties we're considering. Members will recall that we have two properties on Route 7, almost across the street from each other, both the First Christian Church of Falls Church and the mosque property and the Gibson property on the other side of Route 7 that we're looking at tonight. And the staff will give us an update on current situation at the site, and we will also hear from the nominators, any amended information. I would also note that Bill Likos has joined. Bill, welcome. Just say hi to us and tell us where you're calling in from so we can be sure we can hear you, Bill.
Hello, everybody. I'm calling in from Beachway Drive in Falls Church.
Thanks. Michael? pass the baton
thank-
to the staff.
Sure. Thank you, Marty. We did have one other or additional administrative item I wanted to bring before you all, and that is the virtual versus in-person meeting. As I'm sure many of you all are aware, we are still operating under the county's local state of emergency, which allows us to continue to meet virtually. We wanted to do a couple of things. One, I wanted to gauge this group publicly as to your comfort level to continue meeting virtually as long as the local state of emergency is in place. Is that something that you all are comfortable doing, or is there a desire to transition to meeting in person?
Well, let me just start. I would say that I'm very comfortable with our virtual meetings. We have effectively done this throughout our tenure as task force members. Are there other task force members have different
I
views?
have no objection either to virtual.
I'm sorry, Jan?
I said I have no objection to continuing virtual either.
I concur.
Yes, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'm on board also.
Okay, awesome. And I see the nodding of heads. Thank you all for that. That said, I will give you just a heads up that if and when, and I'm not sure if any of my colleagues know as of yet, but at some point the board is going to make a determination as to whether that state of emergency still applies. I know that they had a meeting earlier today. I don't know if they took that matter up or if they made any decisions, but when that happens, our subsequent meeting will be in person. As of right now, it's still a little challenging to find a lot of available meeting spaces, so it's most likely that we will be meeting at the Mason District office once more, where we started, right before the pandemic began.
Yeah, Michael, this is
Yeah.
Clara. I would add that, within reason, if we have a meeting the next day, I don't think we would be expected to scramble to all assemble in person, but I think we would be expected to transition to in-person meetings at that point. But no indication of when that might happen. So I think we would have a little bit of transition time. If a meeting is already planned and advertised and people are expecting it to be virtual, I think we'd have a little wiggle room for that. But for now, yeah, it was just important to check in and make sure this is the task force's desire and that this was the safest way to proceed from the task force's point of view. And I think that's what we were looking to understand.
And likewise, what we're aiming to do if and when we return to in-person is to continue to provide a virtual component. It's a little tricky in terms of logistics, but we think we can make it work so that if there are folks in the public who may not be comfortable yet coming into the meeting space, but would like to still attend, you're able to do so. There will be an opportunity, even if you're joining virtually, to speak if you're a member of the public. So I wanted to make note of that, as well as we typically, or we require at least a quorum of task force members in public. So task force members as well, if they're, if you have a health or a medical concern that prevents you from joining in person, let us know, and we can make accommodations to that end. Okay. All right, sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and jump into tonight's presentation. As Marty has already mentioned, we want to, just quickly provide an update for folks. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We'll give you a little bit of background as to the work that's been taking place to date. Talk a little bit about each of the nominations. See if anything has changed, touch bases with the nominators if they'd like to make any comments or add any additional information. And then we'll provide you all with a bit of the existing condition information surrounding some of the subject properties.
Michael, if I could just interrupt just for a second, I just note that there are There are 12 attendees who are viewing this meeting. I just want to let them know that there will be an opportunity, as we had during our previous consideration of the Ravensworth, although we had no attendees at that one. There will be an opportunity for public comment. This is not a public hearing per se, but we will make that opportunity available. And I just want to also point out to the county staff that there was a mailer sent to the community. It was very well done. It was a bit confusing in terms of how to find out how to sign up to participate tonight. There was a link provided in the written material that was not working, and the QR code worked, but there was some confusion. At least I know in my community there was some confusion. I was able to send materials around, but there may have been other communities surrounding the three properties we're talking about tonight that may have had some trouble getting on. I don't know if we can, redo that or make the sign-on link more prominent on the SSPA webpage. You gotta click down a couple of times to find it now. Obviously, some folks have. That's great, but I just want to make sure that we don't run into any problems with people in not being able to find us. I mean, we're here to be found. So let's take a look at that between now and the next meeting and see if there's anything we can do to upgrade that.
Absolutely. And Marty, I appreciate you raising that. Staff will take a better look at how we can make that information more accessible to folks so that you can obviously register, but also participate in the meetings as well. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you, Michael.
Give me one moment. Let's see. I'll share my screen here. Okay, let's see. Not sure what you all can see. Are you seeing the main screen?
We're seeing the presenter view.
Presenter view. Okay.
Hey, Mike. So
Yeah.
what you can do is just anywhere in that screen, just right click anywhere. It doesn't matter where. And it should pull up something that says, yeah, hide presenter view. That's it.
Got it, man.
Got it.
Graham is the man. All right. Thank you, Graham. All right, so I won't rehash this. We've already kind of talked about what the goal of tonight's presentation is. I want to provide a quick overview as to what the process will look like. First, I wanted to reintroduce the comprehensive plan, what it does. Let's see if I can move things here. You won't still see the screen? I have a lot of things happening.
We have the presenter's view again.
Okay. I am not sure what's happening here. Graham, I need you one more time.
Yeah, I
Is there
think
a
you
way
just
to
need
show
to
the
start.
notes?
Oh, you want to see your notes for your presentation.
Mhm. If not, it's okay. It's all right. We can go without it. Just keep things moving.
Michael, it creates two separate windows whenever you start presenting. So at the top of the screen where it has the WebEx options for sharing, you should be able to select a window to share. I think that you can select the presentation instead of the right now I just see the whole screen. There we go.
How's that?
Good.
All right. Thank you all for your patience with me. We will get there. All right. So the goal of tonight's presentation again is to give you a quick overview of the plan amendment process, what a comprehensive plan amendment is, which is hopefully the outcome of the task force's discussion. So the comprehensive plan is a multi-page document, as you can see here on your screen. It's divided into 5 volumes, 4 divided by geography, and 1 that applies countywide. It's the countywide policy plan. It's a document that is used to help guide the land development process and decisions across the county. It's used to consider potential impacts with future land uses. It uses a horizon of about 20 years or so, so it's an ever-evolving long-term plan. And most importantly, the policies included in the comprehensive plan are not regulatory, but rather they provide analysis-driven recommendations in terms of how we allocate different land uses, such as residential, commercial, industrial, residential. And they also make recommendations for how much of those uses are appropriate in different areas. So there's a key distinction that we want to draw at the outset between the plan amendment process and the rezoning process. And I know oftentimes as proposals come forth in the community, there are a host of considerations that people may have. Some of those considerations may cross both processes. So for plan amendments, our primary focus is to identify what the proposed uses are. In tonight's case, we have affordable senior living, as well as a community center. And we're also tasked with identifying the amount of those uses. So the density of the residential uses, how many residential units are we thinking about? And in terms of the community center, the square footage, how much space are we thinking about in terms of its intensity? Staff are tasked with analyzing the potential impacts of each of those proposals and bringing that information forward for the task force. A rezoning process would follow after a plan amendment if the language is determined, is supported, and the comprehensive plan is updated to allow these uses. Each of the property owners at their own timing, at their own schedule, would be able to pursue an entitlement process. They would submit a final development plan, which has specific information about how they plan to redevelop the site. And as part of that process, zoning evaluation staff will look to ensure that the development plan is in the highest conformance or the greatest degree of conformance with the objectives that we outline in the comprehensive plan. So there's two separate processes. One precedes the other. That doesn't mean that the comprehensive plan process isn't important. It's really instrumental in setting the stage for what we're going to consider or what would be considered during the rezoning process. So what have we done thus far? As Marty mentioned earlier in the meeting, the process actually began in March of 2020, and then 2020 happened, as I'm sure you all are aware. So we had to take a little bit of a break, and we reconvened the task force in fall, late summer or fall of 2020 to go through a screening process. In total, the county received 6 nominations for the Mason District. That ranged from Annandale through around 7 Corners and along Leesburg Pike. 3 of those 6 nominations were ultimately authorized by a board decision in January of this year. So we asked the task force at that time, which nominations did they think merited additional study by county staff? In other words, were there ideas in the proposal that seemed promising that the community should take a closer look at? That's what we did, and we came away with 3 nominations. For the plan amendment work program, which is what we're beginning tonight, at least for the standard track items, staff will study each of the nominations again to provide an impacts analysis for each of the proposals. Forgive me, I'm jumping between two screens. So again, that screening process was completed in the fall of last year with public hearings in January of this year. And now we're into the work program. Tentatively, this portion of the process is scheduled to last through fall of this year and early winter. It will also conclude with a series of public hearings, one before the Planning Commission and before the Board of Supervisors as well. That does not include a separate process, again, to be started at a to be determined date for the rezoning, which will have its own separate public involvement. So some of the steps that we need to accomplish between now and the end of the year. It's staff's intent to bring forward the analysis that was done. We studied different elements of each of the proposals, such as transportation, stormwater, we know was a key consideration, parks, schools, etc. We'll bring that to the task force to help inform your discussions and your deliberation. Towards the end of the process, after you feel discussions have enough discussions have merited your decision, you all are able to call a vote whether you're in support of or not in support of each of the two amendments. I'll note that staff will also bring forth our recommendation. We are looking at a host of parameters based on the comprehensive plan specifically. We understand that the community may have additional concerns that go beyond that. So there will be a parallel recommendation, one from staff, one from the task force, that will go before the Planning Commission. And when the Planning Commission makes their deliberation, or after they make their deliberation, there will be 3 recommendations in total that move forward to the board for decision. The Board of Supervisors is the sole authority for deciding whether or not the comprehensive plan amendment should be updated. So how can you, the public, become involved? We have a couple of mechanisms for participation. As Marty, again, has already mentioned, time will be made available during each of our meetings to allow for public comment or questions. If you have thoughts or your neighbors have thoughts about some of these proposals in the interim, you're welcome to send us email directly to the Mason District office. They will forward it to staff, and then we will make sure that each member of the task force has an opportunity to take a look at that before each meeting. I will go ahead and note that we are exploring other avenues for accepting public comment. There are a couple of online tools that we're looking to use. As I don't have those ready yet, I won't share all of those tonight. But if you can visit our webpage, all of that information will be updated there. And there'll be an opportunity for you to submit comments, or at least a link to some of the resources that we're thinking about using. And Marty, again, to your point, it is a little challenging to find your way on the webpage if you're trying to register for the meeting. So I'm assuming that most of you have probably already figured this out if you're joining the meeting tonight. But if you're helping others, sorry, if you go to the Track a SSPA Plan Amendment webpage, just scroll down a bit until you see the blue boxes, and it will say Task Force Meeting Information, underneath which we'll have the meeting agendas in advance of the meeting, as well as if the meeting is virtual or in person in the future, meeting materials that we provide, including a PDF of tonight's meeting, and the meeting recording. Both the meeting registration will be available in advance. And then after the meeting, if you'd like to share the information with others, you can come here, click on the meeting recording. It's a YouTube link, and you're free to share that or review the meeting as you see fit. I want to pause there briefly. I know that was a lot of information, and I kind of jumped through that pretty quickly. Does anyone on the task force have any questions or thoughts about the process? Okay, hearing none, I think we'll go ahead and continue. Again, for most folks, the information that we'll share here is probably familiar to you. But I wanted to walk you through each of the nominations that are going to be considered over the next few months. So as I mentioned earlier, there were 3 studies that were authorized by the board in January. One went through an expedited process. It was a public storage unit in the Annandale CDC. This one was supported by the task force and the Planning Commission and adopted by the board in July of this year. So that one is on the record books. And that leaves us with the remaining 2 that are very close to each other here on Leesburg Pike, from First Christian Church in Wesley Housing, and PA02, which is from, includes a combination of 2 nominations, one from the Dar al-Hijra Islamic Center and the Gibson family. So to kick things off, we'll start by taking a look at the proposal submitted by First Christian Church and Wesley Housing. It's located at 6165 Leesburg Pike. Plan amendment number is 01 for this new cycle, so it's relatively easy to find. Some of the surrounding uses in the area include residential, predominantly residential, surrounding the church at a variety of intensities, ranging from 20 plus units per acre all the way down to 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre in Ravenwood Park. As you'll note, Patrick Henry Drive is here slightly to the north. This is the Sears site in Seven Corners, and the church facility here. Vinewood, the Jefferson, Greenwood, the Chateau condominiums in Ravenwood Park are all communities that surround this site. And in the bottom of your screen here, you can see what will be the subject area for Plan Amendment 02. So currently, the property is planned and developed as an institutional use. The church has been on the site for many years, and the size of the property is about 6.8 acres. The proposal that we're taking a look at is for multifamily, age-restricted, independent living units, up to 113 units in total, with a small amount of supporting office space, general use or medical office space in support of the assisted living services, as well as a consideration for an expansion on the existing place of worship. Some of the things that we talked about in screening in late 2020 included the provision of affordable housing for the low-income elderly population. This is a stated county goal. This is something that the county has set as a priority, and it has outlined in our comprehensive plan. What we also noted the importance of addressing stormwater in this particular area. We know that there are ongoing significant stormwater issues, particularly in the Ravenwood Park community, and that needs to be addressed, as well as provisions of transitions and compatibility to the surrounding residential uses. We'll quickly take a look at Plan Amendment 02. This again was submitted by the Dar al-Hijra Islamic Center, as well as the Gibson family who reside at 6152 Leesburg Pike. This particular proposal incorporates multiple properties, 10 parcels in total around the mosque, and the single family homes along Munson Hill Road. Surrounding communities are obviously the same. It's quite close to First Christian Church, which you can see in the top of your screen here. Vinewood community and the Church of Christ community sit immediately across the street, with the Munson Hill community to the north and to the east. Currently, the subject area has a mix of plan designations. The properties that front along Leesburg Pike are planned for 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. And the 7 single-family home properties located along Munson Hill Road are planned for 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre. In total, the subject area is about 10 parcels, and I have them outlined here. So on the table is a community center for the area, and a modest expansion to the existing place of worship up to a 0.5 FAR, or roughly 163 to 164,000 square feet, with the inclusion of independent living units. This is something that I think connected both the nomination from the mosque and the nomination from the Gibson family, is this interest in providing housing for our aging population, particularly for folks who may live in the community already and would like to remain in the community. So the Gibson's nomination specifically wanted to identify up to 7 additional units for seniors on their property as well. So we saw an opportunity to perhaps think about both of these ideas in tandem with one another. Likewise, both of these proposals speak to the need to provide low-income elderly housing. The proposal, particularly from the mosque, does offer an opportunity to better think about how its existing programming and future programming can be accommodated on site. And then our continued consideration about how each of these ideas impacts the surrounding uses, particularly the surrounding residential uses. Some of the things that we've heard in screening, this certainly isn't all of them, but these were some of the items that rose to the top. Transitions, compatibility, particularly if you are a neighbor of these properties, that's something that we've heard. Parking management for both sites has been mentioned as a concern. And so that's something that we wanted to take into consideration. Improvements to existing buffering, particularly around the parking lot areas. We know when there's a lot of activity, particularly in the evening hours, that there may be a lot of light spilling over from some of these properties. And so that was something that folks asked us to take a look at. And last but certainly not least, stormwater on both sides was a very important issue. So this mountain of language is the formal board's authorization. This is what they directed staff to take a look at in our study. And it starts off with the review of the proposed plan amendment should include, but is not limited to, the following considerations. I won't read all of this, but I'll draw your attention to some of the highlights. The transportation network impacts to that, particularly access to Leesburg Pike, stormwater management, as we've mentioned, tree preservation, green space, that includes park space and landscaping, building heights, and again, parking management. The board also went a step further and asked us to take a closer look specifically at additional opportunities for managing stormwater on site that extend beyond our current regulations. We've been working closely with the Department of Public Works, as well as our own environmental planners here in-house to think about how we can address some of those impacts from each of these proposals. And then likewise, the board asked that we ensure that a cumulative transportation analysis is done. There are 2 separate proposals on different sides of the street, but they wanted to ensure that each proposal is taking into account the other. So at First Christian Church is taking into account what the mosque is proposing, and vice versa. Ultimately, our goal for this process, our question is to answer this question, which is are the proposed uses and intensities consistent with both community and county goals? And that's something that the task force has been set up to help answer. So how are we going to do that? What we've decided is that it may be best to divide the future meetings up based on the topic areas, given the proximity of both of these proposals. So instead of thinking about them individually, we thought that we tackle them based on the topics at hand. So our next meeting, which is scheduled for October 6th, we'll take a look at our land use analysis that includes concerns or considerations about compatibility, building heights, etc. We'll also provide the feedback that we've received from both parks or from parks, schools, as well as public safety, any of the thoughts that they had about the proposed uses. An important meeting date, I know for many, October 27th. This is our third meeting date. It's dedicated entirely to our environmental analysis. But we know that there's going to be a strong focus on stormwater management as a component of that. We plan to have some of our colleagues from DPWES, as well as environmental planners, again, from the Department of Planning and Development on hand to help share some of that information and to help answer any questions that folks may have. Transportation, November 17th. Each of these meetings, I think, are spaced out about 3 weeks, but we do intend to bring the operational analysis that we received from both First Christian Church and Darul Hijra to the foreground. The Gibsons did not need, given the difference in complexity between each of the proposals, we didn't find it necessary for the Gibsons to provide any formal type of transportation analysis. But we are working with both the mosque and the church to bring that forward. We do anticipate having this information made available in advance of the meeting, at least a week in advance, whether you're a member of the public or a task force member, so that you can review that, have your questions ready to go whenever the meeting is around. And then potentially our final meeting date is December 8th. This is a time for the task force to discuss all of the information that you've heard. I know there will be a lot of discussion at each of the meetings prior to this, but this is an opportunity for you all to form your final recommendations and thoughts. Likewise, this is an opportunity for staff, after hearing your feedback over the course of the preceding meetings, we will bring our staff recommendation for you for discussion as well. The timing on the meeting, there is some flexibility. It could be pushed up a little bit, just depending on discussions and if there are any outstanding issues or questions that are left over from the previous meetings. And with that, before we switch over, I wanted to provide an opportunity for nominators, if they so choose, to offer an update to the task force. But before we do, I wanted to touch base with Marty and the task force members. Did you all have any questions or thoughts about the proposals or about the dates?
Could you just get us all back on the screen, Michael?
Yeah. I don't know if I'll get this presentation back, but I can get everyone on the screen.
Thanks.
Sure.
Just a couple of, I'll just start off, and other task force members, just a couple of quick. I think that the schedule works. I know the schedule in part was driven by the staff's assessment of the timing that you will need to do the various studies that you're doing for this project. It's a complicated, two significant projects virtually across the street from themselves on Route 7. Do for that. I just wanted to, Michael, if you could, I didn't notice if anyone from the mosque was with us tonight.
I think David Gill is.
Yeah,
Oh, David, I'm sorry, David.
Yeah, that's quite all right. I'm here, and I believe Safe is on the line as an attendee.
Okay, all right, good.
So, yeah,
Because I know there's still some lingering questions about not just the two nominations on the north side of 7, as well as the resources that will be needed for the analysis. But I'm comfortable with the schedule, and hope that the staff can has the time it needs to do the analysis that's going to be required. Any other comments, questions from task force members? Seeing and hearing none. Michael, back to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. What I'll do is just quickly, I guess I'll go down the line here. I'll start with Sarah Mariska, who is representing First Christian Church and Wesley Housing. Sarah, if you had any quick updates or anything that you wanted to add, the floor is yours.
Michael, I think she's a participant or an attendee, so you have to unmute her manually.
Gotcha. Here we are. Sarah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, David. Thanks, Michael. And thank you for all these updates, Michael. I think it's helpful to reorient ourselves. My name is Sarah Mariska. I'm a land use attorney at Ed & Feldman, and I'm representing Wesley Housing as well as the First Christian Church of Falls Church. Since we were last before the task force, we have been having ongoing discussions with the community, ranging from the Colmore Clinic and their board, the larger faith community, Lake Barcroft, Vinewood. We've had some initial conversations with the Chateau, and we hope to continue those conversations. And we've had a number of, I think, productive discussions with Ravenwood Park. One thing that I know that we will touch on at the October 27th meeting is that we are very excited that Fairfax County is taking a holistic look at stormwater in this area. We provided some analysis to the county that we hope can facilitate that process, and we're just looking forward to continuing the conversations about stormwater as well as with the surrounding community. So we're going to continue on our outreach efforts, and if there's anything else, I know Shelley Murphy from Wesley is on the line and Pastor Moore is on the line, so if there's anything I have missed, please jump in, you two, but I think that covers our current status.
So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, I'll give a moment, Shelley, Pastor Moore, if you had anything you wanted to add. I did want to extend that opportunity to you.
I believe they're also muted, so you have to unmute them.
This is Shelley. Sarah covered it, so I'm good to move on.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you both. All right, David, then I'll turn it over to you or Safe. If you guys have any quick updates or changes to the proposal.
This is David Hill with Wire Gill here on behalf of Darla Ishra, Islamic Center. If you don't mind unmuting Safe so that he can directly answer the latest and greatest from the thinking of the mosque. You know, their goal has always been to be a partner with the community and to create a long-term vision for this community center. And we're excited about finally being able to kick off this process and work with you guys to find some solutions to the issues you raised during the initial nomination phase. So looking forward to a productive fall.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. This is Saif Rahman. Michael, thank you for unmuting me. I couldn't get on as a panelist for some reason. So I just want to say that the only change that has happened since our initial nomination, I think it was covered, was since we saw that First Christian Church was adding the housing component, that we would be taking that out of our piece and only focusing on the community center component of it. So that the uses could be compatible with one another and we felt would be best for the greater community. So I think the only addition from our part is that there would be no housing component, added to our piece other than the community center. And I want to emphasize that unlike the urgency of the First Christian Church nomination because of the idea of the affordable housing, we are not necessarily in a hurry. We are kind of making our long-term plans for the community and what we felt would be for the best growth of the community. And our plans are more in the 5 to 10 year horizon than they are in the 2 to 3 year horizon.
Perfect. Thank you, Saif. Yes, and that is another important piece to note. We mentioned that earlier, a bit earlier in the presentation, that the timing for either of these developments moving forward is really incumbent upon the existing property owners. So the conclusion of the plan amendment process does not necessarily equate to the approval of the development itself, that they are distinct between the planning process and the rezoning process. And so I think the First Christian Church folks are on a slightly faster timeline than I know the mosque or even possibly the Gibsons are. So that's important to know. Thank you, Say. Okay. Task force members, or Marty, did you all have any?
Michael, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
one quick thing. I think it's also important to hear from Priscilla, because Priscilla, we have not yet come to agreement on what, kind of the whole big plan is between us.
Sure.
And obviously her property is her property. And I think it's important that the task force hear from her also.
Absolutely. Let me find her. Can unmute her here. Mrs. Gibson,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, here I am. Hello, good evening, all. Thank you, and thank you, Safe, and thank you, Michael, as well. Yes, well, our plans are probably we want to move along a little more hurriedly than the Safe mentioned. That is primarily because it's our intention to be able to bring my mother back to the property in a more comfortable living accommodation, but the property where she grew up. And indeed, our family has been there for nearly 100 years, just shy of 6 years. My grandfather began to dig the foundation for the home that sits there in 1927. And in all the years since then till today, there of course have been numerous changes throughout the community, but our family has never made a request until now to increase the density level of the property from its current 3 to 4 homes to the 5 to 8, which we feel better accommodates what we're seeking to accomplish. We started this with the nomination back in November 2019. And at that time, my mother was 93. I'm happy to say she recently celebrated her 95th birthday, but she is very much looking forward to moving into one of the nice cottage cluster of homes, which I know we provided a general concept design at some point, and Michael may wish to share that in a moment. Nothing really further has changed, except that I guess we're all getting a little bit older. And there's our vision for the type of housing. And we feel that by having a cluster of homes, it provides the comfort level to be, comfort level to share with a very unique community of neighbors. It's a more intimate setting, but back on the property. with which she grew up, and indeed I grew up as well. There is also language existing within the plan that requires, if there were to be development, that requires construction of a service road on Route 7. And we are, in addition to requesting that the density level increase to the very next tier, just to allow 5 to 8 homes on the acre, that this language be removed or waived, as a service road in front of the property along Route 7 would truly be a road to nowhere. And with the future rapid transit system coming through and the already congestion, we feel it should be given consideration to be waived. So that is probably all. I don't really have any further updates other than the primary one. My mother is very much looking forward to moving back on to the property in a more comfortable, engaging lifestyle. So, but thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Gibson. We appreciate your sharing and happy, I'm not sure exactly when her birthday was, but happy belated birthday to her.
Yes, I'll tell her. July.
Awesome. All right. If the task force doesn't have any questions for the nominators, we'll continue right along. The next segment of the last segment of our presentation is really taking a look at some of the existing conditions in the area. We highlighted some of these aspects in the board authorization. And so we wanted to kind of take a cursory look at what's there today or what's planned there today. So I'm going to turn it over now to Sean Schweitzer from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation to walk you through some of the transportation existing conditions.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, all. So yeah, as Mike said, I'll be just going over some of the existing conditions transportation-wise for the Route 7 corridor between the First Christian Church and the Islamic Center. So the first graphic we have is existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities. As you can kind of see, the red dotted line kind of shows some, but not all, of the existing bicycle facilities. Kind of see up on like Patrick Henry Drive, there's a bike lane on the northern part and a sharrow going, I guess, eastward towards Route 50. And I believe some of the red dotted lines near the Islamic Center and to the west of Route 7 are kind of encompassing trail facilities, which are pretty much sidewalks at this point. We'll get more into detail on existing sidewalk in the next slide. So if you want to, Mike, if you want to go to the next slide.
Sean, Mike, if I could just ask a question on the slide back.
Yeah.
These are when you say existing bicycle and trail facilities, how do you judge that? I mean, for example, in Ravenwood Park streets, there are no bicycle markings on the road. So how do we, why is, for example, Sherrill Drive a bicycle facility and Colmack Drive not a bicycle facility?
So there's different designations for different types of roads, and I can look more into the specifics as to how they designate certain roads as bicycle facilities. It's usually depending on the width of the sidewalk and kind of policy if the road allows for the usage of a sidewalk as a bicycle facility. So sometimes they tend to, it's a more of a generalized term, I feel, but there are different designations for different types of roads, for arterials and secondary streets and things like that. But for the most part, some of these are what I would consider to be actual bicycle facilities, such as, you know, on-street bike lanes or sharrows, things of that nature. But I can get you a more specific
Okay.
clarification for
Yeah,
that.
because again, the roads that I'm familiar with here have in Ravenwood, or it's actually Ravenwood Park. Ravenwood's a different subdivision, but they're all the same in terms of width and sidewalks and that sort of thing, and they are there are no markings to. I'm just.
Yeah, I hear you.
And also in Sleepy Hollow Manor, where it shows markings on Valley Lane and Nicholson Street, there's no sidewalks at all. There are no markings on the road at all. So where it says bicycle and trail facilities, really clearly what it's meaning is on the road. It's a shared roadway.
Yes, and sometimes it's like a sharrow, or it depends on the speed limit of the road. Sometimes that can designate, you know, bicycle facilities, even though there's not technically more of a labeling of the road saying, you know, bikes can be used here, or a designated bike lane. But again, I can reach out. Some of these might be not up to date for this one graphic. But I can come back to that and talk with our bike ped team to kind of see if they can give me a better graphic to illustrate the existing bicycle facilities in the area for this slide.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Again, yeah, this one is also a little wonky as well. I know that the bikeable sidewalk that it shows on Patrick Henry Drive has been for a certain section. As you get closer to Route 7, the turn lane comes into play. But farther back on Patrick Henry Drive, there is a designated bike lane, and then the opposite, you know, again, going eastbound Route 50, there is bike sharrow symbology on the road. For the trail, there's a little trail, which I believe could be just sidewalk at this point, in front of Greenwood, and then as well as the Islamic Center. And it looks like a little bit at the park at Hudson Park. Munson, sorry.
Sean, we have a question in chat for an explanation. What is a sharrow?
Sharrow is a shared bike lane. Usually you don't need the bike shares the road with vehicles, so you'll kind of see usually on a sharrow looks like a bike symbol with 2 arrows on above it, and it kind of just alerts vehicles or drivers that this road is for all intents and purposes, a bike path, and that you must share the road with bikes and not pass them. So next slide, Mike. Here's just a graphic of the existing sidewalk and crosswalk connections within the area. What it doesn't show is, I know that there in front of the First Christian Church, there is an asphalt sidewalk / trail, if you will, in front of that area that's not kind of designated on this map. Again, there's certain designations for sidewalks and trails, but for the most part, there's some intermittent gaps that are not directly along Route 7. They kind of go off into the Jefferson, as well as in front of just north of First Christian Church. There's no sidewalk there. And then again, I believe that there is sidewalk now south of the Islamic Center. So again, this map might just need to be a little bit updated to show that. And this map is showing the existing bus routes within the area in front of the Islamic Center and First Christian Church. Metro Bus 26A and 28A service this portion of Route 7. Kind of shows you just the other surrounding ones as well. But next, I want to just hop into the different trails transportation plan map. And so here we have the transportation plan map, and as you kind of see, the comp plan recommends that the section of Route 7 from Seven Corners to Bailey's Crossroads is recommended to be widened to 6 lanes. Currently it's 4 lanes total, 2 in each direction. And as you can also see, that portion of Route 7's kind of highlighted in green, which shows that in the comp plan, Route 7 is considered a enhanced public transportation corridor. So as you, the county is currently looking at studying bus rapid transit system along Route 7 for this area. And so those two, what the county is kind of proposing is those 2 new lanes along Route 7 that would be widened to would be designated for bus rapid transit. So those 5th and 6th lanes would be for exclusive, possibly median running BRT or bus rapid transit. And here's some concepts, engineering concepts, kind of high level, kind of workshop concepts of the Route 7 bus rapid transit plan. This came out of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission's Phase 3 study that kind of wrapped up in, I believe, fall 2019, just before the pandemic. And this kind of shows you the alignment or the route alignment of the BRT system along Route 7. So you can kind of see Patrick Henry Drive to the left of the graphic. And in the middle of Route 7 there, you can kind of see the pink 2 lanes. Those would be the designated median running BRT lanes. And you kind of see the purple line is kind of a buffer between the general purpose lanes and the BRT. And that red line at the bottom and at the top, kind of encompassing the BRT system, is the proposed right-of-way that would be needed for the BRT system. And so again, this is kind of high level. We're kind of just workshopping how this would be implemented and what it would look like. And so as we go further south on Route 7, you can kind of see in front of the Islamic Center, there is a proposed BRT station, which can be shown in the kind of purple color. And it's kind of overlaid along the current signalized pedestrian crossing. So that's why it was proposed there, as well as the Islamic Center is currently right there. So it made sense to kind of propose a BRT station there. And again, you can kind of see there'd be more work to be done with that green line is a buffer space. And I know that there is a retaining wall of sorts right in front of the Islamic Center. So that would have to be looked at more closely in further phases. Okay. And then again, the BRT system going south on Route 7 would continue in median running BRT lanes going further south. But again, that map was to kind of help the county start to, as development comes online, to reserve right-of-way for that BRT system. And okay, and this is the bicycle plan map. Just a note, the bicycle plan map and the trails plan map are being revamped right now. The county is undertaking the initiative of active Fairfax. which is kind of there's two different phases. The first phase, which we're currently in right now, we reached out to the different districts to kind of get comments and feedback on different areas of the county that people would like to see improvements to trails or bicycle facilities. And so that's been, they held meetings this spring and finished that up. And I believe right now, you can go on the website. The link is in the lower left of the slide, and there are still taking comments until I believe September 19th on any kind of issues or improvements that the community members feel should be looked at and possibly enacted into the new bicycle plan and trails plan. And again, you can kind of see the legend over to sorry, Mike.
No, that's my fault, man. Go ahead.
So as you can kind of see in the left, the legend, Route 7 is a policy road, as well as what the county recommends is a cycle track on each side or a shared use path, since Route 7 is a policy road. So in that designation, a cycle track is warranted for that stretch of Route 7.
And Sean, could you just explain what a cycle track is? If it's separated?
Yeah. So a cycle track is usually separated from the road. It has two different lanes going north and south. It's usually also usually it's on its own. It's not with pedestrians, it's not like a sidewalk or anything like that. It's also buffered by the road as well, and it's used strictly for bicycles. So here's the trails plan, and again, this is being revamped, but as you can see, Route 7 is designated as a major trail system. So again, what this means is a major trail road or major paved trail designates 8 feet or more in width, asphalt or concrete trail along Route 7, and I believe that they're usually in both directions along Route 7. So again, this will be updated. It's currently being updated by our bike ped team. So we should have some updates on the bike and trails plan hopefully by early next year.
I think that's it. I'll pause here for a moment in case members of the task force had any additional questions for Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
Yeah, Rob Chamberlain. When we're looking at this dedicated bus lane, do we know where they're projecting stops and whether it'll actually alleviate any traffic congestion, or is that going to actually be a further contributing factor to pedestrian traffic there overall?
So currently, that's the next phase where NVTC is commencing phase 4, which is looking at traffic analysis on the Route 7 BRT system from south of I-66 to 7 Corners. And then, so the next phase, phase 4, is broken up into 2 different sections. So they're going to be looking at traffic analysis from I-66 down to 7 Corners, just north of it. And then the next phase after that would be, of that phase 4, would be from 7 Corners down to the Mark Center. So the first phase from 66 to 7 Corners will take about a year, maybe a little bit over a year, like 12, 13 months to complete. And then they'll be looking at traffic analysis from 7 Corners to Mark Center after that. So probably starting next fall to next winter, we'll be looking at the traffic analysis from 7 Corners down to Mark Center, which would encompass this area.
So that would be additional information we would not have in our decision timeline based on this in discussion timeline that we're going with here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sean, a quick question. If there are any right-of-way needs affecting the church property or the mosque and the Gibson properties, will we know that as part of this process, or will that kick in the rezoning process, or how will that be assessed?
That'll be probably in the rezoning process that we'll make those things. But we are, yeah, to answer your point in general, yes, that'll be answered in the rezoning.
And we will make considerations to Marty here. It's expected as part of any roadway improvement, but we can also make notations that as part of the planned BRT route through the area that, these properties should make accommodations necessary to help achieve that. So.
I think I know the answer to this, but just to, I know they, how settled are they on in the medium versus side BRT? You know what I mean?
So, yeah, I mean, BRT is most effective in median running just because you don't have a lot of complications with right turns coming from collector streets, things like that, and also vehicles making right turns or coming out. So the ideal alignment would be median running, and so that's what we'll be testing in MVTC's study. And if what comes out of that, we can kind of come up with the consensus that if that works the best, that from there, curb running, or if BRT was a mixed traffic, then obviously they would have more of an impact on the the traffic analysis as a whole moving forward. So median running BRT is the what you want to reach for, and then the other kind of alignments are if
right.
that doesn't work, then that's how you should proceed.
So I mean, I can see that, but where I'm pausing is just this stop at the mosque. I guess something that right now that they have to always have, every Friday they're hiring out of a police officer to direct traffic, because all of the pedestrian traffic that they have to cross that street. And I mean, I know I'm getting a little bit ahead, but if there's redevelopment, I was kind of wondering if we would be thinking about potentially having adding a pedestrian bridge over that. But
so okay, so I understand what you're saying, like a lot of pedestrian movements. So ultimately maybe that stop you're saying would be better curb running, just because they wouldn't have to cross one section of the street or both sections depending on where the parking is.
Right. I mean, if it was curb running and you had a pedestrian bridge, I mean, not only do you have not have pedestrians crossing the street, to access the mosque, but you also, I mean, they can access either side of the BRT through that pedestrian bridge. I just don't think there's not going to be space to, create the pedestrian bridge access in that little sliver, in the median.
Yeah. And
like
again,
I said, I mean, it's a little bit cart before the horse, but that's my hang up.
Yeah. So what we're mostly going to do is, when we did to the traffic analysis, we'll look at that and see how the pedestrian traffic, especially with the Islamic Center there, how that would influence traffic analysis, red time for the northbound lanes of Route 7. But for the time being, we're kind of just making sure we have the adequate amount of, space for it. So, that's more concrete in the sense that we'll figure out how, what the alignment will be. This is what they kind of were proposing, but again, like we were kind of finding in, the Tyson's area, what NVTC, kind of proposed as the alignment changed. So that could be the case as well, moving forward with, this section of, Route 7 as well. So, but again, I think the overall, idea right now is just to make sure that we have adequate, right of way down the road. But again, so getting back to your original point, this could change. But as of right now, I think this is the way that NVTC is kind of viewing how it would be aligned here. But again, we'll learn more in the next transportation analysis phase.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Hello, Sean.
Yep.
Hi, this is Priscilla Gibson here, and I had a question for you, particularly with respect to the proposed change in front of our property, the 6152. The county fairly recently constructed sidewalk area so that it would be much safer for people, particularly there are many people that reside at the Jefferson apartments that walk to the Dar al-Hijra Mosque, and that was specifically constructed recently to better provide for their safety. To your knowledge, is that sidewalk, would that be removed, and also the telephone lines that are right there adjacent on the property at the Jefferson at the edge of that sidewalk?
I couldn't answer that right now. Again, these kind of concepts are very high level. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the, how concrete they are. They are, bound to change a little bit. So again, I don't want to give you a definitive answer at this point on what it would look like and what would, what the configuration would be, or to that aspect.
Okay, but the proposed time frame along the specific areas for our property and the Dar al-Hijra Mosque are approximately, if you wouldn't mind just reiterating that for me. The time, how much time until the stations are constructed, or what time frame are we looking at?
I would say this wouldn't be until probably, down the road, probably 10, 15 years. But yeah, so not soon.
Okay, so that's sort of in the same time frame that Safe had mentioned for the plans for the Dar al-Hijra Mosque, but there'll be, I guess, a lot of construction going on prior to that with the First Christian Church. So it seems like there could be endless construction in the area. And, currently there is the turn lanes, which many people depend on to access Rose Street to reach the mosque and other destinations. So I do hope that will be given your full consideration.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking at the configurations and the road grid of streets around that area further down.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mrs. Gibson, I'll go ahead and note as well, there will likely, because we love to do studies and have meetings in the public, there will be a host of meetings when this portion of Leesburg Pike begins its analysis. So definitely stay tuned. You can certainly reach out to myself. This is for anyone. Can reach out to myself or Sean for additional information as that progresses. But there will definitely be a time and opportunity for additional input on some of this.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Are there any other questions? All right, we'll keep moving.
Michael, sorry, this is Safe. Can I make a quick comment on
Sure.
what Mr. Longo said on the bridge?
Sure.
I just want everyone that cross signal or crossroad, kind of the walk, put it in there was because Route 7 and was killed, making that crossing. So solving, the issue of people being able to get across Route 7 is definitely something that, as the community grows, is something that I think would be quite essential to do. So thinking creatively on how to do that. I'm happy to speak on behalf of the MOS to say that we're willing to work with the county transportation folks to think about what creatively we can do to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Safe. All right, Sean, thank you. Greatly appreciate your time, sir. We'll keep things moving and take a look at some of the existing land uses in the area. I'm sure if you're a resident here, a lot of this will be familiar to you, but both of the subject properties are primarily surrounded by, again, a range of residential densities. Obviously, the Jefferson apartments, as well as Lafayette condominiums, the Chateau condominiums, have a higher density than some of the surrounding single-family communities, such as Munson Hill, such as Ravenwood Park. You can see along the top portion of the map, the commercial areas in Seven Corners, and the beginning of the Colmore Bailey's Crossroads area here to the south. Likewise, the long-range comprehensive plan for the area in large part follows a lot of the existing development, or I should say the existing development follows a lot of the comprehensive plan guidance. The areas are currently planned for residential uses at a variety of densities. There are a number of institutional uses in the area. The school, the high school, the churches in the area, as well as retail, commercial office uses in Seven Corners, and again, off screen as you approach Bailey's Crossroads. So a really good mix of uses in this particular section. Existing parks in the area, there are a few nearby. Not all of these are active parks, which means they're not necessarily actively developed, but you have Munson Hill, Justice, Sleepy Hollow, for example, that are relatively close by. Schools that serve this particular area, both on the north side and south side of Leesburg Pike, include Justice High School, which is fairly close to the subject properties, Glen Forest Elementary, which is a bit further to the south and east, and Glasgow Middle School, which is to the south, and it's off the map down here. But all three of these serve the populations that surround both the Islamic Center, the Gibson property, and First Christian Church.
Michael, we also have Upper Bailey's, which is further up Route 7.
That's correct. Thank you. Yes, it wasn't highlighted in the in some of the analysis that was provided, but you're absolutely correct. Bailey's Upper Elementary School is very close on the south side of Leesburg Pike, just to the north of First Christian Church. Public safety, and this is very easy. There is Station 28, which is located just off of Sleepy Hollow Road in the Seven Corners Community Business Center, which services this particular area. And then, of course, the Mason District Police Station, which is attached to the Mason District Government Center along Columbia Pike, just north of Annandale. And that one's kind of off the map. Some of the existing stormwater management facilities in the area. Well, first, let me outline, if I can, the sub-watershed. Both the Islamic Center and First Christian Church are separated along Leesburg Pike into two separate watersheds. So this one, the stormwater that lands south of this sort of darker green line that you see here drains into Cameron Run, and the water that lands north of that line drains into 4 Mile Run. I will note that a portion of the First Christian Church property is split between both watersheds, but we'll be taking a look at that in our analysis. The lighter green area is the sub-watershed, for which a lot of the rainwater that lands along Leesburg Pike or just south of it, including the back portion of the church, drains into Cameron Run. And we know, and I'll go ahead and identify here, we know that there are some significant stormwater issues around the Colmack Drive area. Is that right, Marty?
Colmack and White, that's correct.
Colmack and White, okay. This map takes a little bit of a closer look. You can see the two subject properties again. The arrows here illustrate existing stormwater facilities. So these are underground stormwater facilities. The gray circles are access points. So these are places where the water and the inlets where water can enter into the system. And so we will note that a lot of the rainwater that, again, lands just south of Route 7 drains down into the Ravenwood Park community, and particularly converges in this area around Colmack and White Street. And so what we've heard in some of the early work that DPWES has been conducting is that much of this system is significantly capacitated, close to capacity, if not at capacity. And so as Sarah Mariska mentioned earlier as well, these are things that both DPWES and we know the representatives of First Christian Church have taken a very, very deep look at. And so we hope to have some more of that information at the October 27th meeting. Likewise,
Michael, let me just, if I could add, and as Shelley mentioned, we've had a number of meetings with the church and with Wesley and their consultants. And on the stormwater issue, it's fairly easy to see that there are 4 sort of outflows that the property sort of where stormwater would be delivered with a new development. One goes across Route 7. The other 3 are to the south of the site. Of the 4, 3 of them are at 100% capacity in a 10-year storm. One of them is at 85% capacity. This is from a study that the church presented to us. And that's sort of encapsulates the issue that we have. We'll obviously talk more about this, and I'll share later more material with the task force members about our most recent flooding incident since we last met. We have some wonderful videos and photos to share about that. So we'll be talking about this some more as we move forward. But just wanted to make, that's sort of, as you captured, that sort of captures the issue that we have. And that's during a 10-year storm, which is the least of our worries, quite frankly.
Thank you, Marty. Yeah, and we'll do our best to bring, if you want to share some of that so we can add that to the materials, we can have that into the presentation ready for that October 27th meeting.
I'll make sure you have it.
All right, perfect. And likewise for the Islamic Center, less current flooding issues, but it is definitely something that we still want to take a look at. We're taking very seriously, obviously, as things change in the climate, more rain events are occurring. It's something that staff is very mindful of. So,
and we just, if you look at the Islamic Center site, there's even a little bit of water that comes from over there into our community. Just to the left of the 6152 number, you see that intake there, which traverses Route 7.
Out here. Yeah.
It's the Ravenwood Park community. So it's a complicated problem.
Say the least, absolutely.
From our perspective, Michael, as a mosque, I mean, we've got a facility, a pond on our property that's taking probably the water from the neighborhood that's above the mosque. So water is flowing from everywhere, and that pond actually fills up because the community on top of us is much older in terms of stormwater infrastructure. I mean, that's definitely something we'd be looking at, you know, from our perspective also.
Okay. All right, awesome. Thank you again, Safe. It's certainly likely that staff at least even at the policy level, I know we've talked a little bit about the separation between policy and plan amendment process and the rezoning process, to do our best even at the policy level to try to address some of these concerns and to make sure that these are key components of any entitlement process. So we'll discuss that a little bit further as we get closer to the October 27th meeting date. But thank you all, Marty and Safe. And I think that's all I had for you. That's a lot of the general information that we prepared. I'll just quickly notate, and then I'll turn this back over to Marty so that we can take questions. We still have about 20 minutes or so. That our next meeting date, please note, is on Wednesday, not Tuesday, but Wednesday, October the 6th. As of right now, we believe it's going to be a virtual meeting until we learn otherwise. If the board has taken action again with enough time, that will be an in-person meeting, and all of that information can be found on our Track of Plan Amendment webpage.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
It's very helpful as a stage-setting presentation. There's obviously a number of issues. You could just put us all back on the screen so we could see each other. Great. Any questions or comments from task force members? Seeing and hearing none. There are 12 attendees or public members. I'd like to, at this point, open this up for any comment from any of the attendees. Michael, who'll be managing their?
I think I'm in control, but Brian,
Okay.
remind me, there should be a hand button. I see
Michael Frana, right?
Yep. I'll unmute you, Michael. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, if folks would like to
Michael, welcome.
indicate that they would have.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Michael.
All right. Thank you and good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. It is to express my support of the First Christian Church nomination. I am a resident of Lake Barcroft. I do also serve on the board of Wesley Housing as its treasurer and vice chair. And I wanted to say this is an important nomination. Clearly, it's important because it will address critical community issues, including providing affordable senior housing and access to affordable healthcare. It is precisely the type of mission-oriented development that our community needs. I am confident that the church and Wesley Housing will work diligently through the future zoning process to mitigate the impacts of the development, but do want to underscore the importance of allowing this nomination to move forward so that the detailed discussion can occur and important community goals can ultimately be realized. I just want to, affordable housing is a strategic need. It's been identified by Fairfax County. This type of project is especially important given the existing needs in the Colmore and Bailey's community. And I wanted to say that Shelley and her team at Wesley have been tireless advocates for the most vulnerable community members, and they have found an exceptional partner in the First Christian Church. Personally, I'm excited to have Wesley as a future neighbor. I know many of my neighbors are as well, and invite you to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I see Nate Chasen.
Hey guys, I am Marty's neighbor, and I wanted to make a comment about the stormwater runoff. One of the concerns that we've had is that Fairfax County and VDOT keep pointing a finger at each other in terms of who the responsibility sits with in terms of rectifying the routine flooding that we're experiencing. So I'm not sure how to get through that, but I really think that needs to be part of the changes of the comprehensive plan. And I think it's bigger than just the Wesley housing proposal. I think that regardless of Wesley housing, you guys are also talking about other infrastructure upgrades to this area, and it is pretty obvious that this needs to be taken into consideration regardless of whether you guys move forward with Wesley housing. I also wanted to make a quick comment on the proposed upgrades to Route 7. If you're headed west towards Patrick Henry on Route 7, there's a left turn lane that begins probably 100 yards from Patrick Henry. And unfortunately, one cause of congestion is that the left turn lane stops prematurely. It seems to me that you guys could alleviate a lot of congestion by extending that turn lane and eliminating a portion of the median, which doesn't seem to be necessary at that part. I'd love to encourage you guys to take that into consideration. I realize this might be premature, but I think it might help with traffic turning left, which would also help with traffic going straight at that same location. That's all I had to say.
Thanks, Nate. Michael, could you just talk a little bit about interaction between the county and VDOT on the whether what role VDOT plays in this particular part of the process, so we have a sense for that?
Sure. So to speak directly to Mr. Chasen's concerns, I'll be blunt. I'm not entirely sure of VDOT's role in terms of the stormwater concerns. I do know that the Department of Public Works is involved heavily in trying to engage on some of these issues. What I can do is to talk with our counterparts there to see what, if any, role VDOT plays. Now, typically, I guess for the larger study, VDOT owns the roadways, and so they have to be a partner in terms of whatever improvements we make to public roadways or in the public right of way. So they're just a stakeholder that we have to work with. But I'll see if I can find a little more information about stormwater impacts.
Let me just add to that, if I could, Nate. We have, as I mentioned, we had another flooding event recently. It wasn't Hurricane Ida, which seemed to skirt around us. It was a couple of weeks before that. And going back to that map that Michael showed of the stormwater system, there are VDOT lines and there are county lines. And during this last storm, and you'll see in some of the video we share later, the congestion point in the water is a VDOT line. It's a line in the middle of the Colmack and White Streets. We witnessed water pushing up through the manhole covers in the middle of the street, which is a VDOT property. So we have been in touch with them, and we're hoping to get them to take a look at this as well. But Nate is right. There's multiple jurisdictions that sort of, in a strange kind of way, control the pipes. And I would encourage the staff, and I hope they're doing that, to sort of reach out and touch base with VDOT and see what might be done in terms of to create some relief at that choke point where all of those lines kind of come down into in our neighborhood. So just want to make
Marty, to build on that, when we met with VDOT and I walked them around to the property next to mine, which is Ed Coppola's property, they were visibly shaking their heads and commenting on the poor planning of Fairfax County. And when meeting with Fairfax County, they say, well, there's only so much we can do because you'll reach a bottleneck at the VDOT pipes in the street. So it's very frustrating for us because the end result is water in my basement. And 3 times in 3 years, 2018 through 2021, 3 floods. And so it's not really, it doesn't really matter to Marty or myself who's responsible. We just want to get it taken care of. And honestly, it's frustrating for us to have to mitigate that like who, you know, we should be the traffic cop here between VDOT and Fairfax County.
No, and I agree, Mr. Chase, and that's a fair and valid point. My lack of understanding of how that works doesn't mean that it's not something that we can't work to address. So in our meetings with DPWES, we'll certainly raise that to see what the options are, how that communication works between the two of them, and what steps need to be taken to address that. To that point, DPWES has offered. I know this isn't really. It's hard to explain this to just the general community, but DPWES operates sort of at a different level than we do in planning. But they have offered to come out and have separate meetings as part of this to discuss any of those types of issues. So any of those types of concerns. I know you're working with someone in DPWES now. I think her name is Allison. But if you have other concerns like that, just forward them to me, and we'll make sure they're in the discussion.
Thanks. And with that being said, I would like to say that, you know, Pastor Moore and the Wesley team certainly have spent a lot of time addressing an issue that really, sadly, they inherited to kind of, and if we could get this addressed, I think you'd have a whole neighborhood of people that could get on board and, you know, happily march lockstep with Wesley and Christian to proceed with that plan.
I think that's fair.
Thank you, Nate.
Absolutely think it's fair. Thank you.
Michael Lorraine Creeley has her hand raised. Lorraine, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the task force and to the Fairfax County staff for all the incredibly detailed information you provided tonight. I know that that will provide invaluable information as you go forward and, you know, review our recommendations. Again, thank you. My name's Lorraine Creeley. I'm a member of the Culmore Clinic Board and a Mason District resident. I also heard earlier, as I have looked at the Fairfax County Housing Strategic Plan, how the First Christian proposal with Wesley Housing addresses some of those objectives, specifically the requirement for new housing units and how our elderly households are greatly impacted by the current economic situation, where often their income doesn't keep pace with the expenses needed to live in Fairfax County. So I think that our First Christian Church and Wesley Comprehensive Plan Amendment nomination is a very important component to address these goals. Also, I've been a volunteer at the clinic and worked quite closely with First Christian Church parishioners on their many community outreach programs. They are very focused on serving the community, and I know that this housing project will benefit, you know, people in the community. And also, Wesley has a very strong reputation in the county for constructing and managing these affordable adult community. And I feel that this project will be very important to the community. So I'm just strongly supporting this nomination as we go through the process. I know that we'll be able to address the concerns of the community and develop solutions and help to achieve one of our county's goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Mrs. Creeley.
Are there other?
Yes, I have two more. I have Rodney North and then Annalise Quinn. Rodney,
Rodney?
you are unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
we
sir.
hear you, Rodney. Go ahead.
Great. 3 quick points. For clarity, not everybody in the Ravenwood community welcomes the First Christian Church project, just that for the record. 2, regarding density, of course, one of the things that the county rightfully advocates for good planning is sort of reasonable, smooth transitions from one use to another. The planned use on the First Christian Church property is for up to 31 units per acre, and the plot's largest neighbor is Ravenwood, which is about 2 units per acre. So a break from to have 31 units per acre next to 2 doesn't seem to make sense, doesn't make for a good transition. And then lastly, while the county has an affordable housing need, Mason District more specifically also has green space needs. The county has 400 square miles, and there should be some of which are actually increasing their green space. Meanwhile, Mason District is consistently has the least green space per square mile. It is losing more space in absolute terms and relative terms, and we need to do what we can to maintain that. If these road proposals for Route 7 go through, a whole swath of trees by the mosque are going to be cut down. Trees along the chateau properties are going to be cut down. And meanwhile, the school system is trying to take parkland from Justice Park. So I hope others will please think about and speak up about trying to maintain what green space we still have left while it's there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you, sir.
Are there others, Michael? I don't see any.
Yes, I have Annalise Quinn.
Annalise?
Mrs. Quinn, you're unmuted.
Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear
Yes,
you
ma'am.
great.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, the staff and the task force members, for your time and effort this evening. And I really appreciate the opportunity to just briefly to express my support of the First Christian Church nomination. I mean, I do have a vested interest in all of this because as I am the executive director of Culmore Clinic, and the interest that I have is in the patients and the residents in the community that desperately need access to a medical home in the community. Culmore Clinic has been around for 14 years. We have benefited so much from the kindness of the faith communities. We started off at Darul Hijra. They continue to be a great friend of ours, and we've been at Columbia Baptist, and now we're at First Christian. And hundreds of patients, residents of this community, your neighbors, our neighbors, have come through our doors, and they're seeking the very basic right to the health care they need to obtain or maintain their optimal health. At Culmore Clinic, they are getting compassionate, culturally sensitive care, top-notch interpretation services so that they can communicate with their providers and nurses. They're receiving primary care, counseling, specialty referrals, and also integrated health support to tackle chronic illnesses like prediabetes and diabetes, which is ravaging them. We have known for so long that the vulnerable community here really needs a permanent primary health care home. And for that reason, I think that this is such an incredible opportunity for that vision for Bailey's and Culmore to be realized in this wonderful new facility, serving the community. I could say a lot more, but I really do support this. I think that the whole partnership of that is existing within the Culmore Bailey's area with faith communities, partners in the business community, the nonprofits, really work very, very well together, serving the same population, and we really believe that this is going to be such an incredible benefit and gift to this community. So I strongly support, and thank you very much for allowing me to have a moment to talk.
Thank you, Annalise.
Thank you.
Michael, Chris Thompson.
Mhm.
Chris.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. In the interest of time, I'll be extremely brief. I think that many of us on the call today and in the area who live in this area recognize the noble nature of the plan of the First Christian Church. However, what is disturbing to many of us is just the scope and size of the project. We believe that it contributes to some of the concerns that have been brought up on the call earlier with the water infrastructure problems, et cetera. So keeping with Rodney North's comments earlier, many of us in the area just believe that the transition between and a structure the size that's being proposed against a neighborhood that has single family units on small lots is just not appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
I don't see any other hands raised. Are there
me either.
Other comments or questions or reactions from task force members?
Marty, this is Rob. I know you live also, I think, over in this area, correct?
Correct.
And the one thing that I just feel that we keep ducking around is really the change in what this could do for water movement, and it keeps coming up over and over again. Could you help us maybe as a task force understand some of your personal experiences, even for example, in what was relatively light storms 2 weeks ago?
Well, first of all, let me address that a couple of ways. Number one, I was going to do this through email, but if there are any task force members who'd like to walk our neighborhood and see these things, touch these things, feel these things, we've had a number of staff there. Clara was good enough to come out a couple of weeks ago, and it gives you a real sense for what what some of the challenges are that we'd like to address. So let me do that.
I think if more than 2 of us are there, we fall under FOIA requirements.
I was just gonna follow up with saying one at a time. Okay. So, but please contact me through Michael so this can be part of the public record, but one at a time. The second thing is, the best way I can explain it to you, Robert, is if you stand at the corner of Colmack and White Street and you put your arms out in about a 100-degree angle up to Route 7, all of the water that falls up, all the way out to Rio Drive, which is over by the condos and the other church, and all the way up to the chateau, though the chateau goes, all of that water comes to one pipe. And it happens to be at that intersection. And what we see during these now all too common rainstorms is that the water begins to back up, and there is an intake that is situated in the backyard of three properties that is the third or fourth place it hits up the line. We have had in our backyard 3 feet of water at the fence line. Our houses are a little bit higher than that, so it's it's a little bit less when it comes into our homes. As Nate will affirm, and he's, as mentioned in our conversations, he's had about $60,000 worth of damage in his home. We've had about $5,000 worth of damage in our home. He is his stairs go down in the back, and it's more of a problem. Michael mentioned that Allison Brewer, those of you who may have recalled the motion that Penny Gross made when this was before the Board of Supervisors, the board asked that the Office of Overland Water Management in the county's Department of Public Works come out and see if they can do something to help with this situation. And we're still waiting for that analysis to come back. But we have seen an analysis that they've done which show how this water sort of migrates up. They have a consultant how it migrates up, and our homes are just in the wake. It's it's just as simple as that. But But again, one at a time, I'd be happy to sort of take you on a tour. I'm sure Nate or his wife would be happy to join us as well. But you get a real sense for what the issue is when you see it. Happy to do it. And I will share, as Michael suggested, when we do the stormwater issues, we have video and photos, still photos from the recent flooding event. And you will see the water pushing up through the manhole covers in the street, and the other manhole cover dislocated where the water came up, and you will see how that flows into and then to some degree out of our backyards as that cycles through there. So and just let me say that we've had extensive conversations with the church about this. They are aware of the problem. We understand it's not their problem to fix, but we certainly hope it's not a problem that they will contribute further to. But we did have again, I don't want to take too much time. We have another new development just it's on the map also, where the land that was vacant and old and had no stormwater management on it whatsoever was developed with all the current standards for stormwater management and all the great thinking of the county. And the 3 floods that Nate mentioned happened since that project was developed. Because what it is doing, it is effectively and efficiently delivering water to the stormwater system that was not delivered before. It was pooling on site or being absorbed into a very heavily vegetated site. So the best of intentions went awry in that development. That's a small 7 single-family home development that is, again, just up the hill from us. So, and the church is further up the hill. So we are somewhat skeptical, but again, I will say that everyone has going into this with a good faith effort and been very open and candid in their conversations. And we're hopeful that something can be done to address not only our current issue, but ensure that any future development doesn't contribute further to it.
I want to really thank you for that very personal and direct answer to what I'm trying to also better understand. I always appreciate the open invitation to walk with you, and please, let's actually coordinate that. I'd love to come out and look at it, because there are a couple of other things that are just popping up in my head that as we continue to look at some of these developments with the best of intentions, as we continue to add in state-of-the-art systems, but we don't have state-of-the-art systems downstream,
correct,
are we now creating events where properties in your neighborhood get shifted from being in a floodplain or not in a floodplain to a floodplain by FEMA designation? And now those residents are going to have issues in trying to sell those houses because it's a very different insurance, it's a very different loan, it's a very different buyer. What other effects can come down, even though we mean well on A, when we get to B or C and ultimately Z, we still haven't changed the system that it's in countywide.
Sure. Thank you for that, Robert. I will be in touch with you. We'll arrange a time. And again, other task force members, Karen, I'll be in touch with you, and others. Please contact me if this is such an exciting sort of tour. You bring your camera. You can get photos. It'll be a bunch.
Will there be food? Is there food?
We'll provide food.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pipe flow rates are just, so exciting to look at, and what they've designed in the 60s doesn't work anymore. So
that's a big shocker, huh?
Yeah, not a big shocker.
Right. Thank you. Other comments, questions, reactions from task force members? Hearing none. Michael, anything further? Any final comments from staff?
No, just a reminder to folks to please stay tuned into the webpage. The task force members, of course, I'll send you an email, but members of the public, please either send me an email, michael.burton@fairfaxcounty.gov. If you're having trouble, get to the webpage for information. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. We'll see you perhaps in person, some of us, perhaps virtually at our next meeting. We'll wait to hear from Michael on that.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.